Hi guys, me again. I'm going to be looking in this tutorial at something that's quite important to me and something that I really want to push with my students, and that's the idea of how do you move from a grade to another. So you might be regularly getting grade 4s and 5s, but how are you stepping that up? You might know how to talk about language and techniques, but you don't feel like you're getting any more marks. So that's what I wanted this focus to be. So I'm going to look today at how the difference is really between something that's a grade 5 quality and something that's a grade 9 quality. And I'm going to be looking again at the 2018 paper, summer paper 1, and I'm going to look at question 2. So just want to sort of recap what the question was, which was, of course, we know by now that we get given a little extract and that we'll be given a specific focus for language and the way that it's conveyed. So we're looking here about Mr. Fisher's views on the stories, the books and the stories of the past. And we know, don't we, by now that these are always going to be there, but I always advise my class to miss out the sentence forms. I just think it's quite tricky to get high marks on it, and marking this paper for a few years now, it's not very often that I see students do a really good job on that bullet point. But that being said, if your teacher has taught you a great strategy for doing that, then please continue. I don't want to kind of go against anything you've been told. So obviously what we'd be looking to do for something like an 8-mark question, I think really you're looking for 2 P points. Some of you may do P as peel, which is how I teach it. And if you're not sure what that is, then there's some tutorials on how to peel, which is to develop your analysis a bit more. So you're going to look and think about which examples you can best talk about. So we're going to look at that, Mr. Fisher. Just have a scan over it now, pause the video if you've not seen this paper. And so we're going to just look for a few examples. Now when I do this in class, I know I do complete English teacher overkill and look for like 9 million examples, but you're realistically looking for a couple that you can write about, you can explain what you think the meaning of that is. So Mr. Fisher remembered a time surely not long ago when books were golden. So I can see that immediately he's describing the books as golden, and we know that obviously that is an adjective. But here, the books aren't actually golden, so it's not just an adjective, is it? It's also a metaphor. Feels like that's going to be a good technique to talk about. When imagination soared. Now again, metaphorical here, but we were thinking maybe about this as the verb soared. What does that make us think about? It might make me think about birds, and it might make me think about freedom. Gold may have made me think about something that is precious and valuable, costs a lot. So I've got a couple of examples already. So look through if there's anything better. When the world was filled with stories which ran like gazelles and pounced like tigers. I see that word like and I'm thinking simile. And what we have there is 3 similes all together. And what I might want to do then, if I was doing this as a response, is that I would zoom in on perhaps one of those. When I think about running like gazelles, when I think about a gazelle, again, I think about freedom and then having pace and then being quite graceful creatures. If I was going to look at the tiger one, perhaps I'd think about the idea that it was kind of forceful and that it kind of hit you or exploded like rockets. There's something there about how dramatic and exciting those stories might have been. And then I see that verb illuminating the minds and the hearts. So I think that's another good verb I could talk about. Now, so I've gone through this. I can see others, I'd seen it happen, dragons, in those days, dreamed in colour, and good old triumphed in the end. So there's lots of other examples there. We could talk about, the triumphed, that verb there. But I've got enough to talk about, so I need to move on. So what I've done here is I've just looked at, I've pre-prepared kind of a couple of examples, and these are really closely based on examples of students' work that I marked this summer. Not exactly theirs, but close enough. So I wanted to show you this first one, which is a grade 5. So what can you see in terms of the skills here? Just have a look over it and think for yourself what skills you can see that the students managed to demonstrate. So as I'm marking this, I can see that we've got terminology, and so I'm going to the page there. We've got an example. And that example is a good one. It's one that we picked out as we looked at the extract above to describe the books. This is a metaphor, so I've got, again, I can see that this student, if, as it were, would know techniques and terminology, and it shows that the books were precious and valuable. Okay, so what I've been able to do here is explain something about that word. At the point where the writer has used the word golden, what is it really showing me about the books? Well, if I think about golden, I think about, obviously, gold, something that is precious and valuable. It suggests that he, Mr. Fisher, must love them and that they are special and treasured. So I've got some sense here of kind of the effects of this. One thing that I think is really important for you to work on, and this is even true if you're working towards a grade 4 or 5, is that you try to use your own vocabulary to explain what that word means to you. So lots of you will use words like connotations, but equally you can just use words like makes me think of, or paints a picture. Really just try to get across what that word, and that you've zoomed in on, what that word makes you think about. So if I saw a student carrying on the rest of their response, clearly that in itself wouldn't be enough for a grade 5, but if they'd made a couple of points like this and perhaps developed them a bit more, I'd be comfortable in thinking that this was around about a grade 5. Now, where you, some of you will be interested to, or where your focus is going to be in terms of improving grades, is what do you need to do to then take, what's that solid grade 5 explaining language? How do you then move that up and start getting the top marks? How do you start getting grade 9, grades 8, grades 9, grades 9s, bad grammar Lucy, grade 9s. So let's look again. I'm going to use the same example here because I sometimes come across students and teachers who think that the more fancy and sophisticated your terminology is, the more marks you get. It's absolute rubbish. There's no more marks available for you talking about an adjective as there is for a semantic field or any other kind of device. So please don't get yourself bogged down by thinking a grade 9 is about me knowing more big words and about me knowing more techniques. It isn't. It's the quality of what you're saying, your ability to think about different meanings, think about what that word could mean and how it builds to the effects. So let's just look. So we've got the same technique and we've got the same example, and it shows us that Fisher treasured the books. Again, we made that link between golden and treasure. So the metaphor, again technique, reveals that they were special, more valuable to him than money. So at the point where I've said this is starting to become a bit more perceptive. Now, what does perceptive mean? It means that you can look in more depth and detail. You can see things perhaps that other people wouldn't pick out. So yeah, you're calling a book golden. That must mean it's really valuable to you, and perhaps you treasure that book more than you would do cash. So we're going to kind of zoom in even more and see whether we can expand by bringing in another quote. The image of golden books adds to their illuminating power. So I've just got here an embedded quote, which I always think is really, really good, a good thing for you to do within your exams. I don't need to say, the writer then uses the adjective illuminate. Or in this case, I think it is actually used as illuminating minds and hearts. It's used as a verb here. So I don't need to flag it up because I'm using this to back up my point about golden. And I'm saying that golden books, it adds to their illuminating power. It seems, now, again, people think grade 9 is about really, really fancy expression. It seems is a really good little sentence starter to introduce an idea you've got about a word or about a technique. It seems that the light, and again we have the idea of the light, another embedded quote within the books, is priceless as it can enrich minds, something Mr. Fisher finds powerful and rare. So if you look at where I'm kind of ticking, so I'm ticking around it's priceless, it can enrich minds, it's powerful and rare as well. I've made a number of used a number of different words to really zoom in and explain the effect of that word golden. And what I've done is I've backed that up by using extra evidence. So grade 9 is not beyond many of you that are maybe watching this, and really what you're doing in terms of moving from 5 to 9, to put it into like a really simple summary, is that you are finding more words when you zoom in, more things you can say about your word or your example, and that you're trying to back up and support the points you're making, perhaps by bringing in another example and just trying to think really deeply about what that example is showing you. Okay, so perhaps have a look at those two together. I'll just zoom out a tiny bit. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Right, you can see those two together, and perhaps have a go at this question yourself. You know, see how you can translate your grade 5 work to your grade 9, or if you're working at that higher grade, you can just check your responses against this one. Okay, thanks for watching, guys.